Today on the podcast, I'm excited to have Cristina Baker joining me for the first time. Cristina, it's good to have you.
Great to have just be on your show. Thank you, Deborah.
Okay, so I really don't know much about you. So I feel like this is going to be really authentic in the sense that I am learning about you for the very first time. I mean, typically when a client comes in to my office or my Zoom room, I don't really know anything about them. It's kind of like, okay, let's kind of talk about your journey and where you're at, what you're struggling with, what you've been through. So I guess I would want to ask you a similar question. Um, and healing often comes in two parts. It's what God is doing in the present, but also what He's healing us from in the past. And oftentimes those two things are connected. And so I guess my question to you would be, where should we begin? Should we begin in the present or should we begin in the past?
Wow. Both matter because where we are now is because of where we were then.
Well, why
So,
don't you start by telling us where you are now and who you are and what you do, and just give us a little bit of an introduction.
yes. Well, I like to say this. We come to the Lord and we're all broken people being put back together by the Holy Spirit every day. So there's never of like this. Actually, don't I spend very little time talking about well, you talk about there's like this is where I am now, but I always had the question of, well, how did you get to where you were? And so, how I got to where I was because of all of the things that I went through then. Where I am now is I'm a mom, I'm a wife. My husband's name is Ryan, our son's name is Evan, and he's 18. And I get to I get to share Jesus with people in different contexts. Sometimes video creating, sometimes preaching at churches, sometimes just someone on the street on the way to the grocery store, sometimes a family member. But where I am now is doing what I was always made to do, which I believe we all are called to do, and which is part of the ministry of reconciliation. And
Yeah.
so I could say, "Oh, I'm in full-time ministry," but I believe we're all in full-time ministry. We just wear different hats. You're a counselor and a speaker, and you do incredible things. And then God calls some people to be a carpenter, and they get to minister to their team of carpenters. And so that's just, I feel like I wear many hats as you do.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's just kind of what life looks like. And I just feel like every day I'm like, Lord, help me. Because
Yeah.
put me back together, the potter
Yeah.
and the clay.
When you talk about getting put back together and we're all broken in need of a healer, tell us about a season when you felt the most broken.
Yeah. Well, I grew up in a home where my dad was an atheist, my mom, practicing Catholic, well-to-do family. My father came from a very well-to-do family, but very, very broken. Like from the outside, our family was, both my parents were entertainers, so they could work a room like no other, quadruple shot extroverts to the max.
Hmm.
But when the party was over, when the music was gone, life was very different. And so I was sexually abused as a little girl from when I was 4 years old. Not direct from my father, but when my parents divorced, there was a sense in me that was like, I actually think this is a good thing because they don't get along, but it still breaks a child because it was never God's design for their parents to be apart. However, God can redeem anything, but with neither of my parents knew Jesus. And so my mother remarried a Bolivian man. My mom is from Paraguay. My dad took the divorce pretty hard, really hard. So he just went, I mean, he was living a double life per se. You know, he's a very successful, he sold oil heads for a large uh, oil and gas company. And my mom was a stay-at-home mom, learned English when she came to the States from Paraguay and did not have a degree. So she remarried and remarried, very well again. But my stepdad could not stand any of us. We were a bunch of hyper ADHD kids, traumatized in different ways. And we moved to Fort Lauderdale, and I know my stepdad was trying, but one summer they would always send me off to be with my grandmother and my grandfather in Paraguay. So one summer they called me in Paraguay and they said, "We don't live in the States anymore. You're going to go to Bolivia," which is where my stepdad was from. And I don't know what it was about that moment, Deborah. Like, I know that it's not about, one person can have a traumatic event, they're good. And then another person can have the same event and they have PTSD because of
Yeah.
the nervous system perceiving that as trauma. 100% I could remember that moment where I was like, that felt traumatizing. And I went to Bolivia, but I think that that's where everything started to boil over come up to the surface because I started cutting
Yeah.
and no
It's
one
almost
taught
like
me
there
to
was
cut.
no sense of stability, like life is so uncertain and unstable. And that just kind of affirmed that even more. Like, even where you live
Yeah,
isn't secure, stable, predictable.
that's exactly right. I think, of course, you nailed that on the head. I never had the words to verbalize that, but I just always knew when I got to Bolivia, I just remember that I really began to change.
Yeah.
And I didn't know I was really drawn to like Marilyn Manson. I don't know if you remember him, but really
Oh,
dark
yeah.
metal.
Oh, yeah.
And
The goth,
yes,
dark world.
that is exactly right. And I didn't know why. My dad liked rock and roll, but he wasn't into anything dark. My dad is a musician and I was never, I mean, it's not like anybody introduced it, but there was something about that would just draw me in.
Yeah.
Even like witchcraft books and things like that. Like I had never, it was like something would pull me in. Like there was this darkness that intrigued me. There was just a pull to the darkness that I couldn't understand.
Yeah.
And I started listening to Marilyn Manson and there was like a song that said, "Get your gun." And you just felt by the time you listened to that song, you felt like, I just want to put the gun in my temple and end my life. And it felt very enticing. It felt very, like almost comforting. I know that that sounds odd to some people. Like, how could something like that be comforting? I believe that there was just so much pain inside that I could not,
Right.
other than having like a way out. I wanted a
Yeah.
way out, and that seemed even in that I was in my imagination, something was being produced in me of like I could get out of this life and end it all.
Right. It's almost like a false empowerment. Like it gives you back power and control, but not in a real way,
Not in
in
a
the
real way.
enemy's twisted way.
Wow. Yeah, you have this sense of, I always think about how like when you have that sense of control, I had been always been out of control all of my life. I never had control of anything. My
Yeah.
house was out of control. My parents were out of control. My dad was, he didn't mean to abuse my mom, but I think that cocaine turned you into a person that you're not.
Right.
I remember when I began doing cocaine, it was like, who have I become? I didn't believe in a devil and I didn't believe in God because I was an atheist. But I remember one time thinking like, this is the devil because this has brought something out of me that I've never experienced before. Does that make sense?
Hmm.
And then I found people that looked just like me too. Like
Mm,
they were other punks and goths. And now this, not that it became a new drug, but there was something about that that made me feel I'm not alone in all this. And what's the question that most people have is, does, will you love me at my worst? Will you love me at my best? And do you accept me for who I am? I know I had those questions when I came to Jesus. It was like, but do you accept me the way I am? Or do you want to turn me into a project? Am I just another project of yours? So I joined a band, formed a band. I was a lead singer of a punk metal band, and we drank, we partied. There's no drinking age in Bolivia. So I was 14, smoking cigarettes, drinking until I blacked out. And I liked living that way, Deborah. I, maybe there was a predisposition genetically too, but also I think that even though, I enjoyed that lifestyle, not proud of that lifestyle, but I enjoyed that at the time. And maybe there's, because the subconscious is, people say, no, I don't have an issue or I don't have a problem. But yeah, no, I 100% believe, why would a healthy, whole person want to do drugs or want to drink till they black out? My
right.
son has asked me that. He's like, why would you do that? And I'm like,
Yeah. Yeah.
he
You're
said,
trying to find a solution. You're trying to find the the answer to the pain. You're trying to deal with whatever it is that's going on inside of you.
yeah. So I came home, the rubber meets the road moment for me came when I came home from a party and my stepdad was at the top of the stairs and my mom was standing at the bottom. And I kind of tried to shove him when I passed by and he shoved me back because it was getting quite physical between him and I. I mean, I was only 14 years old, 15 years old at that point, but he was very forceful. When we moved to Bolivia was when I saw this side of him that he had not shown before. And we weren't allowed to cry uh, when he would hit us. And if we did cry, he would hit us harder. So I couldn't cry anymore. And I don't know if if there must be some sort of neurological piece to it where I couldn't cry anymore. So you just become really hard hearted.
Yeah.
In fact, now I love to cry. I say like, oh, I just love crying. If it's been a few days, I'm like, Lord, I got to get in your presence because I like to get in his presence because I cry in his presence and it doesn't have to be it's not a sad cry, but it's I love you or whatever. I get in his presence and I'm just like, and I just begin to cry. But I never forget so many years where like I'm like, there are no tear ducts or they were completely dried out.
Yeah.
And so I cried when I came to the Lord for the first time, like, oh my gosh, it felt strange. And there was a sense of guardedness too, because I was like, I don't want to see people to see that I'm vulnerable. Oh, but wait, like, this is really good because it keeps my heart soft before the
Yeah.
Lord.
Yeah.
So going back to that moment, just to make a long story short, I, my stepdad put me in the room for 3 days until they got a one-way ticket from Santa Cruz, Bolivia to Maui, Hawaii. And I hadn't seen my dad in almost 10 years. So my mom took us out of the country, which was outside of their court order of the divorce. So my dad didn't know where we were. So he went totally crazy with the coke and all the things. Moved himself to Hawaii after my grandmother died, inherited a significant amount of money, but he spent it all, like with any drug habit. So I get to the Kahului airport and I had a guitar on my back with my duffel bag, just with my entire life in it. And I recognized my dad and he said, Christina. And I was like, now mind you, I had like black circles around my eyes and spikes, because stay away, right? That was my demeanor. I hate
Yeah.
the world. I hate people, but I really didn't. It was just like,
Yeah.
and often people ask, why would you hate the world and cut yourself? Well, I don't want to use any vulgarity, but some people, sometimes just understanding someone can help you help them. Self-mutilation, self-harm always comes from a place of self-hatred. But for me, in addition to that, it was a reminder that I was alive.
Yeah.
And so, and it was also mine. Like nobody knew it. It was my secret, kind of like what you shared earlier. My secret, no one knows, and I have control. I have power over this, and nobody
Yeah.
can stop me. So I'd wear
Yeah.
long sleeves and long pants in the middle of summer so that nobody could see the cuts.
Yeah.
And my dad was like, Christina, I was like, Dad, I mean, I knew it was him. He looked the same to me. And he picked up my bag and we got into the car and he said, "This is crazy. Your mom sent you here." And I'm like, "Okay." And he said, "I'm homeless and I live in a tent on the beach." And I'm like,
Wow.
"Okay." We came from, and not, um, I came from a 7-bedroom home living in two, they had two pools, my stepfather, two pools, tons of maids. And I never really cared about that stuff, Deborah. Like I knew, like my mom and dad, I from a young age, I'm like, but what good does all of this do us if like all they do is fight? And it just felt very, I always had that in me of what good is all of this? If
Yeah. Yeah.
And looking back, I just like that we were poor yet rich, but poor.
Right. Right.
I always had that. And so that's where my dad and I was, it's like the curtains were ripped open. It was like, welcome to the real world. And we're living in a tent on the beach in Maui on Lahaina, in Lahaina.
Wow.
And so I really think, Deborah, that was like where the Lord actually, he reconnected my dad and I for a moment that would come many years in the future.
Wow.
But it was still, I was taking a bath at the aquatic center. I didn't know when my next meal would be. That was something that I had never experienced before. Millions of people experience it all over the world where they don't know where their next meal is going to come from. They don't know where they're going to stay the night. They don't know where they're going to take a shower. But for me,
Right.
that was a rude awakening.
Yeah. How long did you stay in that season?
Um, Close to a year. Yeah. And my dad had like a blow up queen size mattress in a tent.
Wow.
And, I would write to family members from the internet cafes. I don't know if you remember those $20 an
Mhm.
hour, And I was just like, I'm help, I'm living on the beach. And I never got a response back. And so, but my aunt, my mom's sister, somehow she heard about it and she bought me a one-way ticket to Houston. And of course, nobody wanted to deal with a goth teenager. So most likely on drugs. I wasn't on heavy drugs at that point. I was smoking weed and things like that, but climbing out the window. But nobody wanted to deal with that. They had their own issues, and I was not their kid. So they sent me to Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania,
Wow.
to um, I flew into Harrisburg. My brother left Notre Dame, where my dad had gone to Notre Dame to play basketball as well. And my brother was playing basketball for Notre Dame. And he took a athletic scholarship at a school called Messiah College in
Hmm.
Mechanicsburg. And
It's
I
right in
didn't
my
I,
backyard.
really
Hmm. Nearby.
Carlisle. I'm just remembering different places, but I stayed at a Red Roof Inn, and my brother was quite mortified because he's living in the dorms. His little sister is at living in a motel, and he goes to his basketball coach, and he was like, "My sister, she's an atheist, so Messiah. It's a Christian college." And Coach Manzer, he was an ex-alcoholic, and Coach Manzer went to his church West Shore Evangelical Free Church. And he went to the staff meeting and said, "Look, we've got this girl there at the Red Roof, and we need somewhere for her to stay." So this couple stands up and they said, "We'll take her. We'll take her." And the pastor, I know this now, many years later, but took him into a room. They're like, "Now listen, this is not like we're not dealing with, you know, one of Mary Poppins' daughters here. She's, you know, probably reads the rap sheet of whatever was being said at that moment." And they said, "We don't care. We'll take her." And Jim is his name. These are their real names. They don't mind me sharing. I, he said, "I've always wanted a daughter." Boy, did they ever get a daughter. So I showed up at their house a week before 9/11, and I used to wear my visor. I had this like visor that I'd wear because I wouldn't look people in the eyes um, that I didn't feel could understand me. And it was a Sunday, and all her children were there, which was really, it was humiliating for me, you know, inside, because I'm like, I have a family, but I don't really have a family, you know,
Yeah.
and I felt like an orphan. And so she opens the door and she's like, "Welcome to our home." And I don't know if you remember the movie The Blind Side, but that movie was coming out around that time. She's just like, I think it's Sandra Bullock, same personality, except I'm not like the young man at all.
Yeah.
And because I just feel like he was just a humble young man. I was not. I was a whole piece of work and just a lot of work, you know. And she said, "Well, we just have two rules in our house." And she said, the first one is your curfew's 11. I'm like, "Piece of cake. I just want a warm bed to sleep in." And then she said, "The second one is you come to church with us every Sunday." I'm like, "You know, I'm an atheist, right?" Because I was all proud. I'm an atheist. And she's like, "You can pick or choose." Everybody's looking at me. My brother's there, Coach Manzer's there. It's kind of like, "You're on your own, kid." And I'm like, "I'm on my own." So I stayed and I did everything I could every Sunday, Deborah, to not go to church. I would wear my pajamas. I would wear like obscene cuss words on my hoodies, you know. And I would go to the car and I'd be like, "I'm ready to go to church." And she'd be like, "Get in the car, Chris." She called me Chris. And I'd be like, I'd try everything I could. But what I didn't know is that God was sowing seeds in my heart even then. And the scriptures say that his word is an incorruptible seed and it will do what it set out to do. That's why there's never a responsibility on us how to sow it. He knows how to sow the seed. And
Yeah.
those, I mean, I would just cross, you know, how it's always the same question of an atheist. How is there a good God with so much evil in my life? That was my only argument that I ever had. But
Yeah.
really, I think for me, I think I don't ever want, I'd never wanted to have accountability. I didn't want to respect authority. I didn't want anybody telling me what to do because all of the authority figures in my life had either hurt me, abandoned me, rejected me, all of that. So to be accountable to an invisible person, an invisible man that I can't see and doesn't help me clearly in my mind, no, absolutely not. I was an angry atheist.
Yeah.
Didn't have a problem with any other religions. I had a problem with Christians.
It's interesting. Have you ever heard the quote, behind every atheist is a hurt theist? Like somewhere along the way, they feel like God betrayed them, abandoned them, neglected them, rejected them, and they're hurt. So it's like, you know what? I'm done with this.
That's a powerful, it just gave me chills because I have never heard that quote, but what a perfect way to describe every human being that would dare to say there is no God. The
Yeah.
scriptures say only a fool says in their hearts that there is no God.
Yeah.
And And full, when you study out just the Hebraic, like when they're referring, when Solomon speaks of a fool, we think of like, they're not smart. They're so, it's very deep, it's very profound because it's someone who they're, it's first of all, it's rooted in pride and it's rooted when the reality of it is that when we choose not to relinquish our pride to the Lord or relinquish hurt to the Lord, it's rooted in pride. We don't want to let go of something because we want to hold on to it. It's ours.
Yeah.
And so it's what a powerful quote. I will be using that.
Yeah. Yeah. So then you moved in with this family. You're kind of like, pushing back a little bit, but also grateful to have a place to stay. And then what happened?
So what I love about Sharon is that, and God, He's so intentional. I would say, people, well, fate or chance or God's like this master chess player and he knows he's got a million different ways to get us where he's taking us. But he put me in this family that with a woman that would not judge me. In fact, she would sit there, she would just ask me questions like Jesus did. I didn't know she was doing that. And she'd say, well, why do you believe in abortion? And I'd be like, well, because, who's an embryo to dictate my life? And she would just ask me questions to get me thinking.
Yeah.
And she never forced anything on me. I wasn't her project, I wasn't her agenda. She just wanted to love me. Whether I became a Christian or not, she just wanted to show me love. And I felt that from her. I'd been around Christians before, but I always felt like because I was like this goth kid, they wanted to present me to their pastor like, look what I caught. Like they like reel
Yeah.
the big fish in, and it's like I didn't feel that way with her. I felt like she genuinely just wanted me to love, to feel loved, and she wasn't forcing me to love her either. And
Yeah.
her husband was the same way. And I put them through so much,
Hmm.
put them through a lot. Um, we share things. I always say like it's the only things we can keep hidden are things that we're not delivered from, we're not free from. Now it doesn't mean that it's not even, I believe that when God delivers us, he delivers us from the shame and the condemnation. But you can still look back and say, gosh, I wasn't proud of that moment. So there was a
Yeah.
lot of moments of, yeah, I wasn't proud of that. And I remember Jim coming up to me and he says, Chris, there were these coins downstairs. Do you know where they are? I was like, coins. I was like, well, I took a bunch of quarters, like in this little, I wanted to buy a pack of cigarettes. So I went, took the coins, and they were like this family heirloom that was worth hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Wow.
And I sold it for a pack of cigarettes. And I remember that was like the first time I was like, I'm really hurting them,
Yeah.
really, really hurting this family. And so I graduated from high school. And when I turned 18, I had this thing, there's this whole, when I turn 18, I'm an adult. I mean, I look at my son and I'm like, you're a baby.
Yeah.
You're such a baby. And how did I think I was some sort of, I mean, I thought I was an adult. I always thought I was just an adult and I could do whatever I wanted. And I started partying, started drinking, met a certain person that's when I started getting into hard drugs. When she kicked me out, she said, if you're going to drink, you're going to go out late at night, you can't be here. But I graduated from high school and came to the South, came to Texas, and that's when everything just went crazy. And when I began doing cocaine was when, just like my dad, everything just, I lost it.
Hmm.
I completely lost control of my life. So, I mean, I thought I had control of it. That is the
Right.
deception of addiction is that you think you control it but you don't. It controls you. And you wake
Right.
up one day and you go, how did I get here?
Yeah.
But you can't get out. You can it's like you're in your own prison of what you thought was setting you free has now put you in your own prison.
Yeah.
So the rubber meets the road moment for the sake of time, Deborah. I working as a counselor. I was telling you earlier, my boss of many years is actually here. She's here with me and she took me under her wing. I was young and I was like I was a top performer. I was her top performer there. But she took me under her wing. She took care of me. I'm not sure she knew the length of addiction, but I followed in my dad's footsteps. But I would say, like in Latin America, they say a lie has short legs, addiction has short legs, living a double life has very short legs. It always gets exposed. You don't even
Hmm.
have to expose yourself like it is. It's just it will expose itself all
Right.
by itself.
So somehow in that season, you got a job as a counselor.
Well, I started off in the call center,
Okay.
and
Was it like a ministry?
it was a secular university,
Okay.
and they would make certain exceptions for some of of the like call representatives if they were good. I think they had made an exception or two before. You didn't have
Yeah.
your degree.
Yeah.
Um, and so they allowed for me. It was an admissions counselor. So I had no business doing that,
Yeah.
but I was good at it.
Yeah.
I was young and I got like a $30,000 raise overnight. And I'm like, but looking back on it, I see how God, everywhere I was, he would always give me favor. Whoever was running the show there, he would give me favor with them. And it was his way of, one, I believe, protecting me. And two, it was his way of showing me love. I wouldn't let people love me. I wouldn't let people give me anything because, prideful, that pride inside of me and that self-preservation is what keeps you from people blessing you. I always hear
Yeah.
like I remember one of my mentors in Bible college told me, she said, she also called me Chris. She said, Chris, you are a great giver. You're an awful receiver. She's
Yeah.
British, so it sounded more like the truth, It was like,
Mm.
she's like, you're such an awful receiver. She
Yeah.
said, that's pride.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, it is. And she's like, if you want to be a better giver, you got to be a better receiver. And I just didn't understand that concept. But
Yeah.
the Lord began to teach me that over the years. And I can't say I'm really all there yet. I'm like, "Oh, but I love to give." And, you know, I always have to remind myself of that still to this day. But the rubber meets the road. Well, I mean, I was in a three-piece suit coming home from work and I got pulled over. Those lights came on and I always got out of everything. And so I feel like there's something in me. I felt invincible. I felt like nothing could touch me. And I don't know where that came from, but I get pulled over. I was I mean, the writing was on the wall. I mean, the officer was just like, ma'am, get out of the vehicle. I'm like, why? There's smoke in the car. I mean, there's red flags going up everywhere.
Yeah.
No inspection sticker, no insurance, registration expired. Ma'am, something's wrong with you. And he said, is there anything in the car that I need to know about? I'm like, nope. So he puts me under arrest. I try to resist arrest and he sticks me in the back of the cruiser. And now, mind you, there is no God, right? So I remember like looking up, I'm like angry. And I was like, why are you doing this to me? I hate you. And then I said profane words. And then I thought, but who am I talking to? Yeah, I'm like, wait, I'm an atheist.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who am I talking to? Well, the scriptures say that the moral law is written on every human heart. It's the reason an atheist feels good about giving money to a homeless man. Like the moral law, like God's law, his teaching is in on our hearts. Even Laminin, that where they found that Louis Giglio found, had preached on that years ago. Actually, when we were in Bible college, it was the first time he preached it. And I just remember thinking, wow, you've put the cross in every human being
Yeah.
because he set eternity in our hearts. And so I went to jail, but it didn't hit me there. It was when I got out of jail. I I realized like what I was facing, like the case I was facing, the fact that I would lose my child. And I know, I mean, there's so many parts of this story that I could tell you, Deborah, but God sent me my son to keep me alive, to preserve my life long enough that I would want to stay alive. Because he gave me a reason to live. He gave me a reason to work. He gave me a reason. Now, I was using, but it's still, there was something in me that drove me like, oh, but I have to go to work, even though I went on a 3-day bender.
Yeah.
And how you do that, the mind is very powerful. And,
Yeah.
and that's why I believe that the Apostle Paul talks so much about the mind, because God gave us a very powerful mind. He wants us to be renewed, and we're renewed by the Word of God, and it transforms our mind. But the battlefield's up here. So I believe
Right.
that Satan spoke to Eve at the speed of thought. I do. I believe that he, in some way, shape, or form, well, we know that from Second Corinthians, I believe, it's chapter 10, verse 5. It says, every thought that exalts itself above the knowledge of God. There could be strongholds, but there also are voices. That Jesus said that my sheep hear my voice, and that of a stranger that we would not follow. So there must be strangers speaking at times, and we have to be able to recognize that's not you, Lord. Which is
Right.
when we read the word and we know the heart of God, He, we can discern, oh, Lord, that's not you. Sounds a little bit like someone else. But I
Right.
didn't know that. I didn't know anything about God. So I hear this voice in my head saying, Evan will be better off without you. And I started, like, this feels true. He would be better off without me. So
What was your son's name?
his name is Evan. Yeah.
Evan.
And it means God has given grace, God has shown favor.
Hmm.
And it also, I found this out from a friend of ours at a church in downtown Dallas. He said, hey, it was actually last year when I began editing my last book. Um, my dad went on life support that night, and he said to me, he goes, hey, your son's name means noble protector. And Deborah, he is all of that. Like he came to protect my life, the Lord, of course, through him, and preserve my life so that I wouldn't take my life. Because he knew a day would come with the right people at the right place at the right time,
Yeah.
where my heart was in this place that was so broken. And it wasn't that I was vulnerable, yes, vulnerable, or that I was like, I need Jesus. I was like, I didn't know. I was like, I don't know what I need, but I know I need someone, and I need someone to save me.
Yeah.
The night before, actually, I picked up a pistol I had, and my hand shook so much that I was scared to like blow a part of my face off. And not actually like that was my fear, was like, but what if I end up in a state where I'm paralyzed? Or what if I end up in a state where I do this thing wrong? It's so twisted, right? It's just such a twisted, when I look back on it, even my own son says, well, actually, he told me when he goes, Mom, I figured out why you were so crazy. I was like, well, great. I'd love to know too. And he said, well, the part of, I believe it's the prefrontal cortex, but he said, your brain is not fully developed until you're 30 to look at or to see or even take into account long-term consequences. And so I was like, wow, like, thank you, Evan, for giving me this reason as to why I was so crazy. Deborah, you can tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, it is interesting. I mean, some people have their frontal lobe functioning differently than others, and there's different reasons for that when it comes to like mental health issues, genetics, diagnoses, trauma. All of these things affect our whole bodies, you know, even the functioning of our brain. Drugs obviously have a big impact. So there was a lot of things working against that frontal lobe of yours, you know, just to put it mildly, including spiritual things, you know. The enemy wants to keep us stuck in our past and not be able to envision our future. So
That
that's what
was
he
good.
kept trying to do in you. And then you heard that voice. How did you fight back?
I didn't. I partnered with it.
Mm,
You know, what is crazy is that, even other, so I just say this, like even witches know that they have to gain agreement because it's a spiritual law. It's like seed time and harvest. Agreement is powerful. And
yeah.
I've seen a good friend of ours, a neurologist, they've done these scans where when two people come into agreement on what it like shows the same thing in both brains. Like I was like, wow, like it's like a map, like
Mm,
because there's always physiology behind the spiritual, right? I love how God is so he's God is a spirit, but he's so but but like you think of like quantum physics or physiology is everything's all intertwined. So we're spirit, soul,
right.
and body. Everything is just so perfectly connected. So what everything can be explained, even though we
Yeah.
may not have the answers, but God can explain all. God
Yeah.
can explain all the physiology behind the spirituality and all the spirituality behind the physiology. And boy, I have no idea how all that works. Some things here and there, like what people call deja vu. I actually took it was a neuropsychology, which is like there's a lot of theological concepts. I'm in
I'm
seminary
sure.
and I've been for the last year and a half. I'm like, wow,
I know
God,
it is
like you,
amazing.
so
But one
crazy.
thing that you said, especially, is the idea of alignment. And, you know, sometimes we don't take it that seriously, but every time that we don't fight against a negative thought or reject it or replace it, we're living in alignment with trauma. We're living in alignment with the enemy. We're living in alignment with sin rather than in alignment with truth. And sometimes it takes that proactive stance for us to be in alignment with truth. And we don't even take it that seriously. But like you said, you were aligning yourself mostly your whole life, aligning yourself, affirming things that were never meant to be put on you, things that were never meant to be your template,
You don't know what you don't know.
right?
And I know that when I came to the Lord, I just wanted to spend I wanted to dedicate my life to giving my son that template. I would say like most of my 20s were, you can call it genetical patterns, or you can call it a generational curse, whatever all of those patterns. I was like, I will do everything I can do, but not in an unhealthy way. With I had that, mind you, I had a lot of people discipling me, and that's
Yeah.
something that I'm so thankful for. That I feel like I'm getting ahead of myself, but I'll say this: I am, we hear a lot of things in churches and the pastors and all this, but for every pastor that we see making a mistake, there are thousands and thousands of pastors that are just plowing the field.
You're right
and
about that.
taking care of the sheep and, just taking the blowflies out of them and putting oil on, like, there are wonderful shepherds in the world.
Yeah,
We are
you're right
not
about
going in
that.
the wrong direction. We're just seeing all the things with publicity because when you have larger, which are fewer, larger congregations or ministries or whatever, those are the ones that get the attention.
Right,
But what about the one with 100 people in their church
right.
and they have given their lives to these sheep? They lay down their lives for the sheep, and no one's perfect, but boy, they're doing everything that
Mm,
they can to please
yeah.
the Lord, to please His heart.
So when did you meet Jesus?
Well, you asked me how did I fight that? I didn't. I got a tap on the shoulder from this gentleman at work who I knew was a pastor, and I always stayed away from. Made it my business to stay away from him, Deborah. And I he tapped me on the shoulder. I was like, okay, I want to do this in a painless way. Take a ton of pills, but I got to take enough to for this to be done right this time. And then I get this tap on the shoulder, and he said, "Hey, Christine, I have a word from the Lord for you." And I'm like,
At work, and you don't work at a Christian place, right? So
no,
you're
but I knew.
plagued by these suicidal thoughts, this darkness. It's like consuming you. You're trying to figure out how to do it. You're plotting and planning what's the easiest way, what's going to be the least amount of damage. The next thing you know, one day at work, this guy gives you a word. And what does
And
he
I knew he was
say?
a Christian because my boss, who I told you is here, um, she so wanted me to, I know she always wanted good for me. And so she introduced me to him about a year and a half before that.
Okay.
And he had a Bible there on his desk. I'm like, I'm staying
Go
away
one of
from this guy.
those. Yeah.
Yeah, one of those. I have stories about, one of those because it was like, oh goodness. But just to stay on track here, I was like, a word from the Lord. I'm like, who's the Lord? And I know this thought that I never forgot was, how did he know what I was thinking? That's all that that's what got me. How did he know what I was thinking? Well, he didn't. He was just being led by someone. Now I know that. And he said, hey, we have prayer meetings every day on the third floor, and we want to invite you out. And I thought, it was like somebody like tossed a life preserver to me. And I was scared to go. I was like, should I go? Do I not go? I mean, it was like 2, 3 hours to like this war in my mind. And then really it was a war over my life, right? Don't go. And then I just thought, I'll go, Evan, you know? So I'm walking down to this break room and I open the door and I see these people like pacing the floor praying. And then I had this thought. If there is a God, these people have come face to face with him. And the reason I believe I thought that was because they were talking to him like I'm talking to you, Deborah, just having a cup of coffee, and they're talking to a friend about life, the tough things, the good things. And it was just like, but this felt, I mean, this was like an intense, like a husband and a wife having heated up fellowship, like, and what they were having, not necessarily heated fellowship, but they're like, God, get her.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that's what they were doing and had been doing for some time.
Yeah.
It was like they were plowing ground in the spirit through prayer. And I walk in and here comes their little barracuda they've been trying to catch for a while. Like, come on, ring her in. I could just see it because I'm like that now. I'm like, oh, Jesus, we've got to catch this one together, not like they're a project, but because I've tasted and seen that the Lord is good.
Mm,
And people feel like projects. We should never make somebody feel like a project, but when people are passionate about God and I know this now. I'm like, I'm so passionate. I love him, and he's when we love God, we'll love people, right? We just like we want to tell the world about Jesus. We want to tell the world about this man, this beautiful man that set my heart free and broke those chains that nobody could break. There wasn't music, there wasn't any amount of drugs in the world or money or anything that could give me what only one man could give me. And here this group of people were fighting for my life. I didn't even know about it. For quite a while, like God had highlighted me to them.
Wow.
That's why it's so important, like Paul says, be to be led of the Spirit. And when we walk in the Spirit, we won't fulfill the lusts of the flesh. And when we walk by the Spirit, we live that life like Jesus waiting for that woman at the well. And I walk in and, Deborah, I was so desperate that, like, I knew I was going to go back to jail. And I love my son so much. And I just wanted to be a mom. I wanted to be a mom to him. There was like this part of me that wanted to be the mom, but then there was this part of me but I wanted to have drugs. And I just had this constant tug of war of like, but I love him and I want to have this life. But then there was this other thing that was like, yeah, but I need that.
Yeah.
And I need it badly.
Yeah.
And this constant tug of war. Paul spoke of the war between the flesh and the spirit as a believer. But when you don't have Jesus, you don't know what you're battling against. So the voice of the enemy is like a megaphone. And it is the loudest voice.
Yeah.
Have your drugs. You'll be okay. Still take care of your son. And really the long term, the end game is you can have your son, but I'm gonna kill you in the midst of you thinking you have control of this.
Yeah.
Because you have control. But my long term plan is for you to die in a car accident, die of an overdose. You will overdose again. And overdose like 3 times. So
It's amazing how God's long-term plan for us is always life, and the enemy's long-term plan for us is always death and destruction. It's like whether or not we see it. Let me ask you this, and just because of time and having to wrap up our session together, God clearly captured your heart. I mean, anyone that knows you today would know that there's been a radical transformation. What would you say to those who are walking along someone who seems so far from God? Is the best way to be there for them, to support them, to usher them in to the kingdom?
So I can only tell you from my own experience what worked for me because everybody's different, right? Like I
Hmm.
look at my son and it's like really easy to like capture his heart. He's very, he's easily convicted. He'll cry if I say like I'm disappointed or something. So I'm very gentle with him. With me, I didn't need to know I was a drug addict, Deborah. I didn't need to know I was you know, an alcoholic. I was destroying people's lives, my family's lives. Like, I knew those things about myself, so I didn't seem judging. What was really different for me was this love that I had never experienced before. This love that was like, now they were like taking me, my car battery died. I had no money, and like they were, God was wooing me through them. Like, here, come let me woo you, because now everybody's turned their back against you, and the only people you have here, like, no, everybody's disappeared, and the only people that you have here are the people that I've called to be here to disciple you, to love you the way that I love you, and to give you something you've never experienced before. That is something that I had never, and it was the love. It was that love that was just so strong. And it was the power of prayer, because they would pray every day at noon. And I wow, I would say like prayer is like a sledgehammer that you take on a piece of concrete. And we don't know that, like, you may hit the concrete time and time and again and nothing's happening, but the molecular structures, the structure on the side starting to break down them till there's that last hit. And the slab of concrete breaks open. And that's what they did,
Yeah.
because I he came up to me, said, "This is a matter of life or death." And I was like, I knew I was being confronted with truth. How did I know it was truth? I don't know. I just know truth is truth. It's not relevant like culture says it is today. But I know, I was like, this is truth. And I saw myself dying in a car accident. And I knew it was going to be that night or like the next night. How I knew that? I know now that I knew that by the Spirit. But in that moment, I just like knew it. I would have called it an intuition. But God was like, Christina, it's about to end. Like, you need to turn like right now. Like, it's about to end. This is like the last resort. And then he's like, do you want to accept Jesus into your heart? And I'm like, "Mm, I don't know, save my life, save my baby, change me, help me, someone." And that's when that peace, the shalom that the scriptures talk about, that isn't just a peace of mind, but it's body, soul, and spirit, filled me. And it's like somebody was standing beside me or behind me somewhere and just picked up all those weights. And I'm like, I'm not even high. And those weights are gone. Then I walked outside. And to answer your question, it really ties into this, because my heart was set on fire. And I went from like, I was like running around the office telling everybody about Jesus. And then I'd go out for a smoke break. I had my like pink Bible and I was smoking a cigarette. And then this gentleman that led me to the Lord was like, hey, you can't do this. Like, you can't like smoke weed and like smoke cigarettes and tell everybody about Jesus. I'm like, why not? It's like we have to be patient with people and sit through the process of sanctification. Like, we got a 15,000 page book, and like we're like arriving on page 10.
Right.
We don't like, but on page 250, they're not smoking cigarettes or smoking weed or snorting coke and preaching the gospel anymore. We have to give grace to people because we don't know
Yeah.
what page they're on.
Yeah.
And then for me, that's a big deal, because I'm like, I don't know what chapter I'm in, but I know that whatever chapter they're in, I'm here to love them with the love of Christ.
Right.
And that looks different for
There's
every
a fine
person.
line between challenging people just enough to push them out of
Yes.
their sin and struggle, call them up higher, but you also want to be careful that you're not squashing them, shaming
There it
them,
is.
judging them. And I think the difference comes down to what you said is love. Like, am I doing this out of place of love? Because love will always raise you higher, whereas shame always brings you lower. Like, so to think of it as, how can I like encourage this person to go higher, to take the next level in their walk with God, in their health and wholeness, and the way that you say it and how it comes across and the love behind it makes or breaks it.
Difference. Because
Mm,
I believe that's why he who's been forgiven much loves much.
yeah,
So, but it's not she's a drug addict or was. I just like stole a few things. It's all the same before the Lord. It's just a revelation of we've all been forgiven of much. And when we have that revelation of like, God, you forgave me, and also a revelation of I have a love to go after, God's put that love to go after souls. And I've done some things, some interesting things, say interesting, wild, crazy, because I'm just desperate. If his, though I say this, the only way the devil can hurt God is by taking people to hell and
yeah,
destroying their lives, killing them. So I, we are the reward of his suffering. That for the joy set before him, he endured the cross. And the hair was ripped from his beard. He's flogged, you know, cat of nine tails, disfigured, just completely maimed beyond recognition, unlike anything that creation has ever seen before, past, present, and future. How could I not go after that, what he loves? And I have to rely, we all, I believe, I like to say this. I would say, Lord, show me what you love about this person furiously. And I use that especially when there's people it's hard to love. We have people
Yeah.
hard to love in our life.
Yeah, absolutely.
But whether they're hard to love, easy to love, you show me what you furiously love about them. Because
Yeah.
then I can call them into their destiny. And
Yeah.
destiny in God is the one thing that, like you said, calls people higher.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I was made for something.
Right.
Like I'm
I know.
useful. I'm not, I always said, ah, I'm just a waste of space in this world.
Right. And look
And
what
God's like,
God
no.
did. That's amazing. I mean, your story is such a journey of darkness into light in a really clear and tangible way. I mean, literally, from even just spiritually, emotionally, psychologically, but even just your appearance from darkness into light, like almost everything from the inside out. And now you get to help guide people from darkness into light as well. Where can people learn more about you and your story and what you're doing to help others?
Yes, yes. So at CristinaBaker.com, it's Christina without an H, in Spanish, that I'm on TikTok, Instagram, it's Christina Baker, and Facebook. I'm trying to keep up with all of them, Deborah. My husband helps me with some of those. I'm like, okay, what else do we have? What's the next thing? And also just wrote a book called A Minute of Hope,
Mm,
which is my first book is about my testimony, but the second book is just, I had a book of prayers. That's how I learned to pray. And I would
yeah.
march around my room and I would read from this book and I could feel the peace of God come. That were biblically based prayers where I learned how to pray the word of God. And the word of God started getting in my heart and
Mm,
delivering me. So sometimes deliverance is instant. There's freedom. But what I've found more, it's more of a process. It's been more of a process for me.
yeah,
We're
it
going
sure
close
is.
to 20 years, and I'm like, well, we're still working on that.
Hmm.
Hopefully, I can come to the Lord with a new problem. But those ones that were destroying my life, the Lord's like, that, it's got to go.
Yeah. Amen. Well, thank you so much for sharing your
Thank you,
story.
Deborah.
Thank you for your ministry
Thank you.
and the hope that you're offering to show the light of Jesus to those who are in dark places.
Thank you, Deborah.
Thanks
Thank
for
you
joining
for
us.
having me today. Thank you.